Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the closing night of the Real Abilities Film Festival. I'm Isaac Zablocki, director and co-founder of Real Abilities. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of this festival all week. First of all, I'll describe myself. I am a very pale man in a bright blue sweater with a gray background. And a picture of Peter Pan from Hyde Park hanging behind me in black and white, drawn in pencil. For those of you who would like a live transcript, that is available. Just click on the live transcript button on the bottom of the screen. And of course, we have interpreters, ASL interpreters here as well. This has been an amazing, groundbreaking week, and we were so excited for you to be a part of it. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your questions and being part of the conversation. All of our conversations are now available on YouTube as well, almost all of them. They're all getting up there. This one will be available there as well, and you have till midnight tonight, actually technically 11:45, to take one last chance to see these amazing movies that we've been presenting here all week. So check out as many as you can and tell your friends this is their chance to see it here. I first and foremost want to commend the film team here at the JCC for putting together a world-class program, including live and virtual elements. We had our first live events in over a year at the JCC, and of course our opening night drive-in with Best Summer Ever that I hope you've all had a chance to see. By the way, our moderator tonight, Lawrence Carter Long, has a guest role there. So if you're not into musicals, see it for that reason. There have been so many moving parts as to make this festival happen, and I just give such amazing credit to our team here. I'll start with Yara Kedem, Real Abilities National Director, Morgan Magid, our Film Program Manager, Miranda Lee, Film Program Associate and Partner Coordinator. We had Noah Ostroff do our live comedy night coordination. Karima Parton did our opening night coordination. Jessica Epstein did our amazing marketing. Melissa Regan helped us with our grants. Shelby Ebert got us fundraise for us, and is from our development department. And of course, the amazing, really a round of applause to Sam Brunswick and Matt Temkin and Jeff Fontaine for all the audiovisual needs that we had, and they really brought us to life here this week. So thank you all so much. We learned that virtual elements can make our festival even more accessible, and we'll continue to raise the bar on accessibility, I promise. I want to thank all of our interpreters and captioners and all the tech folks who made this the most accessible festival ever. I want to thank the individuals who make this festival possible, our co-chairs, the amazing Michelle Faig, Lynn Bartner-Wiesel, our advisory council chair, Jordana Manzano. Lynn, by the way, you get the award for attending most Q&As and being a part of the conversation. That award goes to you this year. Taken away from Kunal. Sorry, Kunal. They will be honored along with Heidi Lorensky at the JCC benefit on June 9th. So please join us for that. I want to thank our entire selection committee and our advisory committee for helping us create this amazing program. Some other individuals, I will start, of course, with our partner, my partner in crime, Anita Altman, who co-founded this festival. Rebecca Lindenbaum, Barbara Dobkin, the amazing Lorene Arbus, and some new supporters who have come on board this year in a more serious way for the first time. Nancy Collin, Sharon Bunkin, Wendy Barish, Ronnie Raymond, and these are all people who are going above and beyond. Thank you so much. I want to thank our PR team, Required Viewing, and some other amazing supporters that made this year possible. Our opening night sponsor, Pfizer, J.E. and Z. Butler Foundation, who is one of the founding foundations of this festival, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council of the Arts. Is everybody keeping up here? Sorry, I'm going so fast. I'll take a breath. Our supporters from the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities and the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, the National Endowment for the Arts, Michelle Spitz, Woman of Her Word, for a lot of the audio description that you had access to, Rita and Stanley Kaplan Family Foundation, UJA Federation. A big thank you to Black Magic, who both gave equipment and they'll give an award to our winning short film. And they ran yesterday's workshop that Lights Camera Access put together, and did an amazing job for young filmmakers looking to come into the field, along with the amazing Dolby, who came on board this year also in a serious way and ran one of those workshops yesterday. Winston Prep is our education program sponsor. FYI, Achilles International, Comcast, NBC Universal came on board, Omnicom came on board, Lights Camera Access, as I mentioned, had an amazing diversity panel on Monday that you should all check out. It's recorded. Warner Media sponsored our industry panel with Lauren Ridloff and some other wonderful filmmakers. Vimeo has been our conversation sponsor. Chapel Haven Schleifer Center has been made our comedy night, was our comedy night sponsor, that first in-person event. And a huge thank you to JP Morgan Chase, Force for Good, who is helping us create a streaming site. So all the films from our past years will be available anywhere in the US streaming now. Check out all of our partners who are doing amazing work year-round on our partner page. Thank you all for making this possible. I want to thank the filmmakers who made these amazing films, and you can't imagine how much work and how hard it is to put these films together, and we know, and thank you so much for bringing them to this festival, especially this year when we were virtual. To our presenting partners who've stuck with us virtually and were able to present some of the films, and again, to you, our audience, for watching, interacting throughout the week. These films are allowing us to better see people with disabilities and put them in the spotlight where we belong. This might go without saying, but I want to acknowledge our mothership, the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan, that shows us every day that they truly believe in inclusion. So thank you very much. This festival will now travel nationally to cities across, and internationally to cities across the world. Next up is the Boston Real Abilities, which starts, I think, this week. And now it gives me great honor to introduce our closing night honoree. She is a true icon and a groundbreaking spirit of this field. I think all of you must know who she is. Please welcome Temple Grandin. Temple, thank you so much.
It's really great to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. We had your mother lives in our neighborhood on the Upper West Side, so we had her a few years ago, and we are just so glad that we were able to have you this year, and we didn't have to fly you in either, so that's nice.
No, I've since COVID, I did my first flight in March after getting fully vaccinated, and I did one other flight, and I've got a bunch of trips coming up in May. But my big speaking events, I just had speaker agents call, and they're postponing them to next year.
And the Zoom seems to be working well too.
Well, I missed a lot of the live interaction, but I've been talking to a lot of people. I've been doing conferences where I've been talking to a lot of people in other countries, and I've been able to do some talks with small schools that I normally would never be able to do because I'd be at the airport on a plane, or so there's been some good things, but the thing I really miss is just talking to people in person. I think that's true for everybody.
It's true. We're going to have to get used to that again.
We are going to have to get used to that again. And the two meetings I did go to, I had a great time at them.
Yeah, no, it's good that things are starting to open up, at least here in New York. I have to tell you that just this week, I was sitting my kids down to watch something on PBS, a cartoon, and it was about heroes from history. And I don't know if you even know this or have seen it. I forget what it was called, but there was a cartoon about these kids who travel, and one of the heroes that they go to visit amongst, Albert Einstein and all the greats, was you. And I've been seeing this, your portrayal in media. You have become a true pop icon. What do you think of how you're being portrayed? Have you seen these shows and these cartoons?
Yes, I watched that show. I thought it was really cute because it emphasized that autistic people can be friends, and that it showed some of the sensory sound sensitivity, and how I made kites when I was a child. I loved making kites and little aerial things. In fact, I got a book called Calling All Minds, and it's all my childhood aviation experiments. And I had to tinker to get these things to work. I think one of the big problems today is kids are totally removed from the world of the practical. And to get my kites to work, I had to experiment with them. They didn't work the first time.
Well, you'll be very proud to hear that I have a daughter who's 4.5 and knows all about autism, and I think has somewhat definitely a better understanding than I did at her age, and that's really, I think, something that will help our society. You showed your book, one of your books just now. You've written. I was looking up your books earlier, and you have written so many books. I don't know if you have a count, and I'm interested to know your writing process a little bit, and what drives you to write a book. How do you decide that this is a book that you want to write?
Well, I've been asked, got invited. Well, my very first book, Emergence Labeled Autistic, I was approached by the publisher, and then Thinking in Pictures, which is my autobiography. After Oliver Sacks did an article about me in the New Yorker, an agent named Pat Brynan seeked me out, and to do Thinking in Pictures, and then where I explain how I think completely visually. And when I was young, I didn't know that other people don't think in pictures the same way. It's been a journey for me learning how the verbal thinkers think.
I'm definitely more of the visual learners myself. Throughout your years as an autism advocate, have you seen major changes? What are some of the changes maybe that you've seen throughout the years?
Well, I think they've really gotten a whole lot better on early education with very young children. That has really improved. But the thing that worries me is with the older kids not learning how to work. The problem we have is autism is such a big spectrum, going from, they've put all the different the Asperger's, that's been all put in with the others. So now you've got the socially awkward, no speech delay in with ones that remain with a lot more other challenges like epilepsy, and it's all together. And I'm saying smart kids who are 16 years old have never gone shopping. They're not learning enough just basic life skills, things that I was learning when I was in elementary school. They're not learning working skills. And I'm suggesting that when kids get to be 11, we need to find a substitute for the old paper route to learn working skills, like go to the synagogue and do a volunteer job, where you're doing a job on a schedule for somebody else outside the family. That's the boss. I think that's really important, because I'm seeing grandfathers coming up to me, and they learn that they were autistic when the kids get diagnosed, but granddaddy had a paper route. So I learned working skills. And when I was out working on the projects I designed for the very, very large meat companies, I worked with welders and designers and machine shop people that today would be autistic, dyslexic, or ADHD, and they were brilliant. That's about 20% of the people I worked with when I was out there in those big factories on real heavy construction stuff.
This has been a big part of our work here too at Real Abilities, as far as creating job opportunities and opening up the market more. And there was this filmmaking training workshops this week. So hopefully both in the film area, this is something that we're definitely advocating for, both for big corporations to hire people with disabilities and hire more people with disabilities, and also, of course, to prepare people for the workplace.
Well, the thing that I learned when I first started, I had to sell my work. Here's some of my drawings for some of the things I designed. And, and when you're really different, I think I just put that upside down there. But when you're different, what you got to do is, what I learned that I have to do is show off my work. That's how I sold jobs, is I simply would show people on drawings and the things that I could do. Because I was socially awkward, but when they saw my design work, also some of the things I'd written, I wrote in all the farm magazines. That was another thing that really helped me get my career started.
So what is your advice for young people who are looking for jobs, who are on the spectrum?
Well, I'd look for a lot more back doors into jobs. Half of all good jobs for everybody are back door. In other words, it's through contacts, through friends. And then once you've got the job, you got to keep the job. Like show up for work, you got to, do what you're told to do. That's why it's so important to learn the working skills young. I always I say to parents, well, who do you know that owns a shop? We need to be making a lot more use of the back door. That's half of all jobs for everybody is through contacts.
And I say that backdoor goes on the big level too. And I think,
absolutely. I'm talking about, well, I did a talk at Apple, and I sat next to a young man that was there, and I asked him what he did. And he said he designed some hardware and some stuff. And he told me he came out of the Midwest, and I said, well, how'd you end up at Apple? He says, my professor knew somebody.
Absolutely.
That was 2 years ago. That's recent.
Yeah. I think corporations need to look a little harder and open their minds.
I found that I'm a big believer in, especially in skills, like filmmaking, you can show off a portfolio. Design work for livestock handling, I can show off a portfolio. Programming, they can show off some of the code and then some of the things the code did. And because that's how I sold jobs. That's how I ended up designing the front end for all the Cargill beef plants, because I sent a portfolio, and I just showed you one of the drawings that was in it, to the head of Cargill back in the late 80s.
That's an important lesson.
That's how I got the job. And there was pictures in it, and you don't put too much junk in it. You want the 30-second wow that a busy executive can look at. And then I was asked to design the facility.
Yeah. I mean, you're also lucky that you were able to get the executive to look at it. We need more executives to be open.
What I did, I didn't have any special contact. I looked up, I sent it in the old-fashioned mail. This is pre-internet. And they went for it. And they had a big drawing that they did, a great big huge drawing. It was this big that they could unfold. And he took one look at that, and I had a very professional brochure and a couple of pages of pictures and a couple of trade magazine articles. And I got the call. That's what I did.
That's amazing. And I give them a lot of credit also for opening your package, opening the mail, and being open to doing it.
Persistence too. Persistence. And make yourself really good at something. You can now, there's all these publishing tools you got that I didn't have. You can put things up on YouTube, but I tell parents, well, make sure you put your good stuff up on Vimeo or up on YouTube. Put the good stuff up there. Don't put the junk up there. It's sometimes better to have fewer really good things up.
I think we lost you there for a moment, Temple.
Oh, okay. Everything's coming through. I'm seeing the sign language interpreter just fine.
Now we hear you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I don't know what.
I'm just going to ask you one more question. We were talking before about children also learning about autism from an earlier age. What are your hopes for the future of the autism advocacy movement?
Well, I want to see people get out and have careers. What's made my life worthwhile is having an interesting career. I think I've done some things to improve the livestock industry, and that's something that was worthwhile doing. Having an interesting career has given me a life that, I've done a lot of interesting things. And I got friends who shared interests. When I was in high school, I was constantly bullied and teased in school. And the only place I was not bullied, friends who horseback ride, friends who electronics and model rockets. And then later on out in the industry, I had, friends in the livestock industry, and having an interesting career. That's and I feel now I want to encourage the young people to get out and do things. And we've got to teach basic skills. I just can't believe the number of fully verbal individuals on the autism spectrum aren't learning stuff like shopping. And a lot of parents just can't let go when I suggest that, they start to learn how to do more of these things on their own.
And I'm sure this pandemic is not helping at all.
The pandemic's been really bad, but this was going on long before the pandemic got started. The pandemic has not helped things at all. It's been bad.
I'll share that YAI, one of our partners, has a school, and it was 2 years ago before the pandemic, and they want to do this at every festival, but 2 years ago, they were able to come and actually use our screenings as a way to teach the children tools for going to the movie theater and being a part of that experience, which was something that unfortunately the other movie theaters on the Upper West Side, at least, were not open to doing. And we couldn't be more proud to be able to have that service as part of our festival as well.
That's really good.
Temple, I want to thank you so much for being here. We're honored to have you. You are a true inspiration for so many, and have your film connections too. It's really, I see you everywhere in a lot of films.
One thing that I really liked, the film showed how I think visually. It had my projects in it that I really liked, and I just want to see people get out and do. Let's concentrate on what you can do. I mean, I can't do algebra. That's just hopeless for my kind of mind. I'm not going to try to become an algebra specialist. So, and I'm worried with my kind of visual thinking that some of these requirements to have algebra are keeping somebody out of a good job as a truck mechanic, for example. You don't need algebra for that. You need old-fashioned arithmetic the way it was taught in the 50s when I went to school. You've got to start looking at what people can do, because there's often really uneven skills. Where you're good at one thing, bad at something else. Let's turn the thing that you can be good at into something that can be a satisfying career.
Thank you so much, Temple. Thank you for being with us.
It was great to be here.
And please stay for the conversation for our closing night film.
I was going to stay there.
Excellent.
Thank you. I'm going to stay for the panel discussion.
Thank you, which gives me great honor now to introduce our moderator for Not Going Quietly is our closing night film. This is really, I mean, I'll let them talk about it more, but I have to say it was, when we saw this, it was a slam dunk for our selection committee. And we were so excited to make this a part of our festival and are really excited about this conversation now. So I think there's no one better to moderate this than one of our founding inspirations himself, Lawrence Carter Long. Lawrence is not only works for the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, but has been with us as a modern dancer. He's been a radio show host and much, much more, including curating the Projected Image, A History of Disability on Film for Turner Classic Movies. He is an encyclopedia of disability film. I'll hand things over to you, Lawrence Carter Long.
Thank you so much, Yitzi. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It's my pleasure to be here with you again, albeit virtually, and to be your moderator for this film in particular. Joining us tonight for this conversation is Nicholas Bruckman, who's the director of Not Going Quietly, Amanda Roddy, who's a producer, Ady Barkan, who's one of the subjects, and Liz Jaff, who's also a subject of the film. And so thank you all for joining us tonight for this conversation. I was doing my research and I double checked right before the conversation today and noted that Not Going Quietly has a rare, highly coveted 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So you're ahead of Citizen Kane. And I was thinking, with a rating like that, it shouldn't be surprising that there are many impressive things about this film. Perhaps most striking, or one of the most striking things, is the candid and the very intimate way you share moments that others would probably prefer to keep private. that they reveal only to themselves or their loved ones. And even then, not because they want to, but because, well, they have no other choice. With a movie like this, those decisions are often made in the final edit. So I wanted to start out, since this is a film festival, with a question for Nicholas. Nicholas, the director, you produced the feature film Valley of Saints, which won an Audience Award at Sundance and was nominated for an Independent Spirit Award. Your previous directorial effort, La Americana, told the story of a young undocumented immigrant in New York City who struggles to save the life of her ailing daughter in Bolivia. Not Going Quietly takes a similar journey in that it highlights how those paying any degree of attention in today's United States, that the personal is increasingly, almost inherently these days, political, whether you want it to be or not. Can you tell us a little bit about how Ady's story became a documentary film and why you crafted it in the ways that you did? We're conditioned often to think of something like someone coming down with ALS as a personal issue. Yet with this film, you take a different tact. You use Ady's story to help illustrate a more expansive, bigger picture to audiences. Can you tell us a bit about that process?
Cool, awesome. Thank you, Lawrence. And thank you to everybody at the Real Abilities Film Festival for having Not Going Quietly. And thanks, Ady and Liz and my partner in crime, Amanda, for joining. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to share the film with you guys. And before starting, just want to give one shout out on my end, which is to Michelle Spitz, who did the audio description for Not Going Quietly. My grandfather was blind and was an activist for the rights of the blind in India. And I don't think that he ever got to see a movie. He certainly never saw one with an audio description. And so knowing that the blind will be able to see this and see Ady's story and experience it through sound, thanks to Michelle and to Real Abilities for connecting us, is incredibly meaningful. So just wanted to express that. And the origin story of the film is very connected to this question about the personal being political. Liz and I have a mutual friend in common. I run a production company making films for social issue campaigns, immigrants' rights, social justice, racial justice, all types of.
Go ahead, Nicholas. Tell people the name of that production company.
It's called People's TV, okay. And thanks for the plug. But the call came from Liz, who just told me that she had met this incredible guy on an airplane and that they were going to start a campaign together to fight for healthcare. And could we work together on a 2-minute launch film for the web to help promote the campaign and make people aware of this fight and raise money and do all the things that social causes need to do. And so I flew out to Santa Barbara to meet Ady. And really within the first hour, I thought before going in, this was going to be kind of a somber or sad story. Somebody with this devastating illness, asking politicians for his son to protect his health care and sort of begging and pleading. Exactly. And it was completely the opposite. Ady was the funniest and most resilient and had the most kind of combative attitude that he was going to basically beat ALS. And while he was at it, he was going to beat the Republican politicians that were going to take away his health care. And so I realized one critical factor about the film is that Ady was already losing his voice. And whereas in most documentary films, you need to spend like years building trust, which I'm still working on with Ady. In this case, we didn't have any time to do that because Ady was losing his voice and we wanted to really capture his progression. And ALS, as I'm sure many of you know, is this day-by-day experience. And I think that one of the reasons that Ady was open to the kind of intimate filmmaking that you're talking about is I was incredibly struck when I met Ady that he had told me that prior to encountering Jeff Flake and becoming known as the sort of face of the movement for universal healthcare in the US, he had not been very public about his ALS diagnosis. He hadn't shared it on Facebook. Of course, close friends and family knew, but many people called him when they saw that Flake video and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I think in the beginning, and Ady maybe can correct this, but had it been in the first months after his diagnosis when he was capturing those videos and I came along and said, "Hey, can we make a documentary about your ALS and show the whole world how terrible this is, or what this means to you, and be around your family and your kid and these obviously critical, vulnerable thing?" I think he probably would have said no. At least I think most people would have. And what changed, I think, a bit is that because of what Liz and Ady did together, of catapulting him to fame and catapulting him to be the voice and the face of this issue, I think he realized inherently that this story was meaningful and had power, and actually that exploiting, as Liz says in the film, his disease is a way that he can create change on this issue. And I think there are costs of being in a film, but I think made the calculation that it was worth it because of the impact it could have, and I hope it's having that impact here. So I'll leave it there, but that's a little bit about how this came about.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I wanted to pivot, and I'm going to come back to you, Liz, and talk a little bit more about that in a moment. I wanted to pivot right now to Amanda. Amanda, if we could talk production a little bit. I think most people see the name, the word producer, they see names attached to it. They don't know what the heck a producer does. And you've produced film projects for clients like the Nature Conservancy and Facebook and CoverGirl and Cambridge University Press and a number of places. You wrote, directed, produced a payday lending documentary called Bleed Them Dry. And you've worked with Emmy winners and PBS. Can you talk a little bit about the logistics of pulling everything together, often on the fly, in order to make a film like Not Going Quietly work? What would you like people to know in terms of the work of film producers?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a difficult one to answer because I think producers do a lot of things. But in terms of this documentary, it was pretty complicated. As you know, Ady and Liz launched a national tour across the country, starting in California in an RV, going all the way to Maine, and we were busy catching up with them, and they were going at a really high rate of speed, so it was pretty exhausting trying to keep up with them and their work ethic. Meanwhile, trying to coordinate a crew that helped support, we were also supporting them by making political ads along the way, and then kind of went over time and started to film the behind the scenes of their work because it was so fascinating. So I think that I actually learned a lot from Ady and Liz in terms of being a producer because of their work ethic and the way that they just kind of rolled with the punches and were really flexible when situations went sideways and just kind of rebuilt and re-strategized. So I think I had the privilege of learning a lot from them. And I think you see part of that in the film for sure, the way in which they just like take on new challenges swiftly and carefully. And that's what you kind of have to do as a producer as well. You have to reevaluate a situation at any given moment because documentaries, real life happens all the time and you can't predict it and you have to roll with it. And sometimes things are really difficult and sticky and you kind of have to make the best of it. And so that's a lot of the work of a producer, I think. And then also, you know, helping to pull the film together in the edit as well, kind of having a knowledge of what happened during all the footage that we captured, and trying to figure out the best way to organize it and pull it together was also a big challenge, but one that I learned a lot from, and kind of it was cool to relive a lot of the things that we experienced on the road and beyond and pull it together in a tight narrative. So that is a little synopsis of what it's like to be a producer, and I'm still figuring out how to do my job, to be honest. So
sort of the art of improv, right?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
On the fly. Now, I wanted to make sure that you got your props because it's a tough gig, and these films wouldn't happen without the producers.
Thank you.
Ady, if I could pivot to you to harken back a little bit to my initial question to Nicholas. You know, beginning the day you got the diagnosis, the scene you shot in bed. Presumably wasn't for a documentary at that stage. And then on later in the film with the Hope is a Hammer scene where you start to lose your voice and another scene, something we don't see a lot in films about disability. You're getting your hair washed in the shower, even things like your trach surgery, you know, somewhere along the line, you and the team, you had to make conscious, deliberate decisions about what you were going to include and what you were going to leave out. And it's sort of a personal parallel to the kind of transparency that you're asking our elected officials to do. I was wondering if you and maybe Nicholas after could talk a little bit about those decisions and what it was like specifically for you, Ady, sharing those scenes with the world. Was it different than what you imagined going in? And if so, how? And what do you think, how do you feel about the decision to be as candid as you were here with the benefit of hindsight now that the film is completed? Thanks.
After my diagnosis, I had to decide how I wanted to spend my final years. I had to decide what really matters most to me. And I thought long and hard about it. I talked to Rachel. And, in the end, I just reached the conclusion that what is most important, above all else, is being a famous reality TV star and making a lot of money. So this movie, and the decision to show personal moments on screen, was a no-brainer. Wisecracks aside, it's true that there are many intimate moments of my life and illness in the movie, and frankly some of them are hard to watch. ALS is a horrible disease that corrupts everything it touches. It has paralyzed my body and made my life infinitely harder. At the same time, ALS, and my life because of it, has pushed me deeper into the collective struggle for a more just and equitable democracy. Personal stories have the power to move people in a way little else can, and being open and transparent about mine has allowed me to transcend my dying body and help bring more people into the movement for justice. So it wasn't a hard decision to be candid in the film. Though I never could have imagined, when young chaps Nick and Amanda first approached me with the idea, that the movie would become what it is today. Finally, I must add this movie and its candid look into my life is also, for me at least, meant as a record for my children. I want my kids, now just 1 and 4, to know who I am, even if I am not around anymore. I want them to know that I love them, and I cherish the life they will live, and the world they will create for themselves. I hope they see that in the film.
Thank you. Nicholas, anything you'd add to that?
The only thing I would say is that I'm very grateful that Ady was so patient to film himself. Hi, Willow. Hi, Rachel. That Ady had the foresight to do it. And I think in some ways, as I think about it, I didn't give him enough credit to say he wouldn't have agreed right away to make the film, because I think that Ady, what isn't shown in the film, has had a decade of experience organizing and using storytelling for social change.
Yeah, you allude to it, but you don't.
Yeah.
It's a different story you're telling.
Yeah, we would love to have told it more. And I hope people can learn more about Ady's book, Eyes to the Wind, which tells the full story that we couldn't tell in the movie. But Ady had a lot of foresight, and I think that's what caused him to document that. I think he knew that someday those might be important, and that comes from his experience as an activist telling other people's stories, and then the story that could change the world became his own.
Great, thank you. Which gives me an opportunity. I think it's a good time to go to Liz. Now, Liz, I'm a communications director for a nonprofit organization that's been around since 1979. So a lot of what you're doing in the film and what it shows you doing in the film is near and dear to my heart. I wanted to, as the film shows, it's kind of a surprise and a pivotal meeting with Jeff Flake, right? That sparked the flame that unfolds in the film. Ady told Flake, be a hero. And that became sort of the rallying cry. That was sort of the moment when the group was born. Your campaign right after that really went after and targeted the 2018 elections, midterms. And you and Ady began to travel cross country in an RV to stir the pot, right? With those those 30 congressional districts, I should say. One of the scenes, the sections of the film that resonated most with me is when you were helping train everyday folks how to effectively bird dog evasive public officials. I'd like to see more of that in the world, and especially when they're evasive. And the Hollywood Reporter said that watching these sessions was a crash course in active citizenship. The room's full of nice people training themselves to be jerkishly dogged when confronted by political doublespeak or evasion. So I'd like to go to Liz first and then maybe back to Ady for a moment. For lack of a better phrase, could you talk a little bit about the importance of being, well, what some people may consider impolite. The process of pushing regular folks past that impulse and the conditioning to be nice, like we were taught, where I grew up in Indiana. You know, much of the criticism that we see leveled at groups like Black Lives Matter suggests that tactics of disruption like yours make people who are generally just comfortable enough to roll with the status quo just uncomfortable enough that they can't easily escape, ignore, or disregard what you're doing. So why this approach? What's the value? What's the necessity? And what would you say to those critics? What do you want those folks to understand?
Well, I think I want them to see the results, because the results speak for themselves. You know, Ady had this confrontation with Senator Flake, and I was lucky enough to film it. And I think we all get very uncomfortable with confrontation, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be screaming at the person. You can ask them very serious questions. And the reason that Jeff Flake agreed to see Ady was that at that point he had a cane, he was walking slowly, and he said, my life depends on this, I have ALS. And that was kind of a moment that hit on us of, it's a terrible situation, and I'm sure that so many people on this call know it, but you are definitely treated differently when you are seen to have disabilities. And you can choose to lean into that and leverage it. And that is something that Ady decided to do. And I mean, it's a very hard thing that we went through, but Jeff Flake wouldn't have come back to speak to him if Ady hadn't pushed and said, I'm going to be dying, you need to talk to me. And those members of Congress wouldn't have met with us if Ady hadn't said, look, I need to see you, I'm in this wheelchair, let's go. And, you know, what just happened recently, which is pretty amazing, is, you know, Ady interviewed every single presidential candidate last year and ended with now President Joe Biden. And one of the ways that we got folks to speak to us is Ady doesn't know how long he has to live. He is choosing to use this time to do the best he can to change the world. And it's pretty hard to say no to an invitation like that. And so there's a lot of pressure, and we use that pressure to politically push people to have a conversation. And for Ady, it's about Medicare for all and healthcare. And in fact, yesterday, there was a video that went around of Ady interviewing President Biden, who was a candidate at the time. And he asked him, if America finds a vaccine first, will you share it with the rest of the world? And Joe Biden said, absolutely, positively. And that video, because Ady asked that question, now has 2 million views, and is one of the reasons that President Biden agreed to lower the opposition to the TRIPS waiver today. And it's just moments like that where you realize, you know, that you really can do anything. And Ady's chosen to weaponize his illness. I am the political operative, and we weaponize whatever we can. And so what was really a gift for me is, you know, instead of working for some politician who kind of sucks and wants power, you can work for somebody who you truly believe in, who, you know, they're going to be as dogged as they can, but it kind of makes sense. And I really think that when we combine that, bird dogging takes on a different impact, because when you have a human conversation and you push somebody to stop giving you political rhetoric, to start looking you in the eyes and answering you, why don't we have Medicare for all? Why aren't we fighting for other people? Why is my son dying, right? When we have those conversations, we can change the world. And that is Ady's premise, and that's what Be a Hero is. And as somebody who was not a bird dogger and had never gotten arrested for a sit-in, 3 weeks after meeting him, I was back in the Capitol getting arrested and filming this guy and changing my entire life to, you know, follow him. And, you know, today was just another reason why, because, you know, Ady had a massive movement, as did many others, in pushing the president to do the right thing, which we knew he hopefully would do, but that was captured on film, thanks to Nick and Amanda. So it's a really great way to bring it all together. And this is why bird dogging works. Have the honest conversation and weaponize what you can, but do it in a human way.
Right, and do it in a way that you can't easily wiggle out of it, right?
Yeah, you gotta hold them. You gotta say, you don't want to sit down with this father who has 2 kids who has ALS, and you know this is his time left. You don't want to have that conversation. No politician's going to say no to us, because that's a tough thing to say no to.
And if they do, you've got it on camera. Not going to do too well in the polls, I would guess.
Yeah, I just think it's better for everybody if that conversation happens.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Ady, what would you add to what Liz just said?
Power concedes nothing without a demand, wrote the abolitionist Frederick Douglass. I agree. In a democracy, politicians should be accountable to real people, and when they're not, I believe it's our duty to speak out. I find it difficult when politicians with great political power decide to wield that power in service to giant corporations and profits for ultra-rich executives instead of making life better for the people they were elected to represent. I confronted Senator Flake and tried to make him feel uncomfortable, because he was trying to cut enormous amounts of funding from Medicaid to underwrite more tax write-offs for the wealthiest people in America. I got arrested disrupting Congress 7 or 8 times, for the same reason. If that offends someone's sensibility of civility, then so be it. For the moment, America is still a democracy and we still have a constitutional right to petition our government for redress of grievances. The outrage is not that I yelled, but that there are United States senators who vote to take away people's health care. So I don't see my work, or that of be a hero, as impolite. In fact, I've always tried to be respectful as I've gone about my work, because I think that's how we ultimately win on anything we want to get done. I think our approach at Be a Hero has been hand in hand with millions of other Americans who, for the past 5 years, have volunteered their energy and passion to hold the powers that be accountable and together accomplished something amazing, which is the preservation of our democracy. All of our tactics are geared towards showing people that we can choose a different path and inhabit a future where everyone can live with dignity and has the basic resources they need to thrive. I think we're doing a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to also, well, this might particular theme, I saw a number of themes sort of rising in the film, and this is one I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about. And while this one might be a little more subtle than the others in certain ways, I don't think anyone can watch the film without coming away, even unconsciously, with a greater appreciation for the largely unseen and far too often ignored necessity and role of caregivers in our society, and caregivers for folks with disabilities. So if we could for a moment, I'd like to put that front and center. Ady, while I've got you on this, could you tell us more about the role of caregivers in making the work that you've done possible? And beyond that, how they continue to contribute to the life you enjoy with Rachel and Carl and Willow. It's very clear, speaking with everybody now and seeing the film, that there's a team effort here, that it takes the work of everybody in order to make it work. So what would you like our audience to take away with them today about the importance and the status of caregivers, and how important are they, and what, if anything, needs to change?
Bring her. If I did not have my 24-hour team of caregivers, I would have no other option but to be in a nursing home. This is not an acceptable way for me to live because the quality of life would be so poor. They allow me to live at home where I can interact with my family every day. Carl and Willow can climb up onto my lap and we can have conversations or listen to music together. Rachel has been working from home because of the pandemic, and so we get to participate in each other's daily lives. Having professional caregivers frankly saved my marriage, because with their help Rachel and I could again be partners and co-parents instead of patient and caregiver. Mario and Izzy, the two people primarily featured in the film, are 2 of 7 in my team of caregivers. They are an extension of me. Not only do my caregivers observe and care for my health, but they do tasks that I would do if I weren't paralyzed, like unloading the dishwasher or putting laundry away. In our household, we work in harmony together. Full-time home care also allows me to work every day with Be a Hero to fight for a single-payer healthcare system, as well as for long-term home and community care, so that my reality of reliable, well-paid, and professional home care is available to all.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really important, and I appreciate you talking a little bit about that. And hey there, how y'all doing? I'm getting a little wave on the screen. I want that picture, Liz. Okay, you have to send that to everybody. So while we're talking about issues that don't get enough attention, and while I've still got you here, we're keeping them in the frame. Nope, they popped out. I would say that the answers that you've given are testimony to the fact that technology plays an important, if not pivotal role in helping you continue to engage and interact at the level that you do, both with the communication device you're using to speak with us and the machines that helps you breathe, the wheelchair that helps you get around. And they're important, in fact, necessary components to living life to the fullest if you've got a severe disability. While many, if not most, who haven't used them seem somewhat resistant to those things. Say they don't want to rely on machines and things like that. What has your experience been with assistive devices? And is there anything you'd like people to know that you hadn't thought about or considered prior to getting ALS?
Come back to me.
Okay, we'll come back to that one, a dramatic pause, and people can think about that and what technology means in their lives, especially here we are, during the course of the pandemic over the last year, where we've all become more reliant on technology than probably in ways we never would have imagined before.
Lawrence, one point I would make about technology, and this is probably less to your point about Ady's assistive technology, which I'll let him speak to, but I think another subtle theme about technology in the film is technology as a tool for activism.
Yeah,
what Liz did, and I think one of the things that was really compelling to me is that as a filmmaker is that what Liz did was made this little film with her phone, right? With no training. She just knew how to do that because of her activism and because of this tool that she had in her hands. And much like Derek Chauvin wouldn't be in jail right now if an activist hadn't sit there and filmed him for 8 minutes, Ady might not be here with us today if Liz hadn't used that tool and ultimately known how to use social media to spread that. And as they go on the tour and they empower other activists, a lot of disabled activists, sick people, a lot of these trainings are not just about confronting the politicians, but about capturing and sharing that content effectively, which in the 10, 15 years ago wasn't possible, at least not at the scale that they do it now. And so to me, that's really inspiring as a filmmaker that, yes, I do this because long form films, people go to the theater and it hopefully changes perspective, but it doesn't have to be that. Anybody can do it with the tools that are available to them. And I think there's this kind of like old school 20th century idea of like civic engagement as like, write your senator. And the new way that Liz is doing it and that Ady's doing it and the people they empower is don't write your senator, go find them, film them and put them on the internet. And that's how you're going to get them to really listen to you. And so that to me is really founded in technology and of course the spirit and the training that Be a Hero provides.
That's great. And people are sort of conditioned to think
technology to.
Oh, go ahead.
As you know, I use eye gaze technology to write and speak. Having to type things out one letter at a time means there are hundreds of things I want to say every day that I just can't get out there, phone calls I want to jump in and say things on, and things I want to say to the people closest to me, especially Carl and Willow, that just take too long to articulate. It's truly horrendous. And yet, I am so grateful for the technology that does allow me to communicate. It is a lifesaver. Assistive devices on their own are prohibitively expensive. One way we can improve access to assistive technology is by integrating the tech directly into mass-produced devices. Siri is just one example of assistive tech that is used every day by people outside and within the disability community. It is within our reach to design a more inclusive society, one where disabled people have the support they need to lead independent lives.
Thank you. And I want to remind people that we're going to get to your audience questions in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about a pivotal scene about 2/3 of the way through the film, where Ady, you cede the floor to Anna Maria. This is during the Kavanaugh hearings. Could you tell us a little bit more about that moment and the importance of, I think this is important for activists, not only knowing when to talk, but also when to shut the heck up and to let other people have the floor. As we see in the film, soon thereafter, she also has her own pivotal moment with Senator Flake, and in the end, calls for a short pause in the confirmation hearings to allow further investigation. talk, if you will, about that moment, or for a moment, about the beauty of pausing, and about the unplanned magic that can happen when we do. I'll start with Ady, and then we can, if anybody else wants to speak to that. Thanks.
Answer. It was important to me, and to all of us gathered that day to protest Kavanaugh, that Anna Maria and other survivors of sexual assault be given the space and support to speak up. Especially in these emotionally charged spaces, it's important that we don't rush to fill the silence, but that we, as allies and participants of that space, hold the tension steady. What will emerge, will emerge. The last thing you want is for someone who has lived through a traumatic experience like sexual assault to feel rushed or pressured into telling their story. It is your story to tell, on your time. I am really proud of Anna Maria and her courage in confronting Senator Flake. We all know she made a difference that day.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to moments like that? The importance of pausing? No pressure.
I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to hear, especially like with Liz and Ady, like how they pivoted all the time with the Be a Hero movement to capture all of these new political events that were happening. Like Liz and Ady had to make a decision to pivot the Be a Hero movement to start to capture the Kavanaugh protests too, which wasn't directly related to healthcare at every point in time. And it'd be interesting to hear about that in more detail.
I think we it's pretty much in the film that you see Ady and I fighting with each other about if we're going to go to DC or not, and like the impossibility of building a crowd. I mean, it was midsummer. Were people going to really be upset about Kavanaugh? And what was really wonderful is that Ady was right, and they were. And we kind of joined a bunch of other groups, you know, Women's March, CPDA, you know, Ady's other organization. And what was really great is just everybody got together against one single fight, which was we should not have Kavanaugh. And it was a really important time to make space for people who had experienced sexual assault to really have their voices be heard. And I think that, as Ady said, Anna Maria did something really amazing, but what's also important for us is, you know, the political fight always changes. It's not always specifically about healthcare. It's not always specifically, you know, we have fights about immigration, we have fights about climate change. And the bigger concept of Be a Hero is you have the opportunity to be better than what you're doing right now. And that was what we asked Susan Collins to do. She ended up refusing not to, but because of the campaign that Ady started, we raised $4 million in small dollar donations against Susan Collins. It was 150,000 individual donors who pressured her and raised more than had ever been raised before in Maine, before, you know, the crazy numbers started happening, and was what encouraged people to realize that Susan Collins actually didn't keep her word. There was a different thing here, that like she wasn't actually on their side. And that was all the question of Be a Hero and taking a pause and being able to pivot. And I think that that worked incredibly well, even though unfortunately we lost that fight, it stayed through. And a lot of the people who shared their story that day are still activists now, are still sharing their story again. And I think that that's part of what the film also tries to encourage. What Ady wants is he wants a movement, and he wants others to be sharing their story and to take that moment. And whether you're pausing, whether it's uncomfortable, whatever the disability is, you know, use it and use what you need to be heard, because there is an ability for all of us to be heard however we need to. So yeah, that's, I think it worked so far.
Yeah, and that really speaks again to, I think, the art of improvisation, right? And when doing campaigns like this, and kind of flips that conventional wisdom on its head, right? That says that individuals do things despite their disabilities, when often when you're faced with situations like these, you're doing it because of the disability. You know, that it's the catalyst, and it's sort of the thing that can move you beyond yourself. I wanted to ask one more question before we move to the Q&A, with the audience, which will be next, which is that the film ends on a very hopeful note. After Ady, you take this step back following the most recent presidential election, after really taking it to the candidates, as is shown there, to spend more time with your family. I'd like to ask Ady and anyone else who would like to answer, What you are feeling most hopeful about right now, here we are just a little past 100 days into the beginning of the new administration, as people get to see and reflect on the themes visited in those films. So what are you feeling hopeful about and why?
Last summer, when Joe Biden Zoomed with me for the final interview of our Uncovered series, I asked him directly if he would strengthen Medicare to include home and community-based long-term services. In that interview, he made a commitment to a multi-billion-dollar program investing in home care workers and families entrusted with taking care of their loved ones. And during President Biden's joint address to Congress last week, he delivered on that promise. He made a public commitment to a $400 billion investment for home and community-based care services in the upcoming infrastructure package. A $400 billion investment would be a major step forward in our struggle for high-quality, universal health care, because there is no path to Medicare for all that does not solve the home care crisis. Passing the provision would enrich the lives of millions of elders and disabled Americans who don't have access to the quality in-home care they deserve. This victory is a big one, and due in no small part to the strength of our healthcare movement joining in solidarity with disability activists, home care workers, and families who demanded better for years.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important to note that home and community-based services are infrastructure, especially for the lives of people that rely on them. What, for the rest of you, what are you feeling hopeful about? And what would you like to leave folks with?
I think I'm super hopeful because of people like Ady and Liz who have dedicated their careers to helping other people, to protecting other people, to fighting ruthlessly every day to make that happen, and not stopping at making other people uncomfortable too, because it's that important. I think being around that makes me incredibly hopeful and definitely lifts my spirits to believe that like these heroes are out there and they literally are heroes. It's just incredible what they do, and to have been exposed to them and their world for so many years, I truly am beyond grateful for all of that, and it's changed my life, and I'm excited that it'll change other people's life on a wider scale too, as they see the film and get to see that work up close and personal, because it's really freaking cool.
Thank you, Linda. Nicholas, Liz?
Go for it, Liz.
I think, I'm really hopeful for this next phase of Be a Hero, just to be telling all these stories. And in fact, just reached out to Yara to say, the community that's watching this right now, we want to tell your stories because we want to use these stories to help pass HCBS. So I've asked Yara to kind of connect us, and you should reach out and let us know, because what Ady's created is this organization that will live on. And the idea is that we will keep using, weaponizing, getting ready to use everything we can to push the administration and others into the best way we can. And so I'm really hopeful, because I think we have this opportunity to do so much good with President Biden. I mean, there's a lot to do. We have to do it. And I think for the Senate coming up and other things, we have amazing people fighting. And the more people who can share their story, the more we will win. And so I feel really hopeful about that. And I'm glad that Ady's fighting the way he is. And it's hard not to if he is.
Yeah, I echo all that. And I think the only thing I would leave people with is a shameless plug to continue following the journey of this film and to support Be a Hero.
How can they do that, Nicholas? How can they do that?
To support Be a Hero, I'll let Liz talk on that first.
Yeah, I was just going to thank everybody for sharing in the chat. It is beaherofund.com, and you can go on there and look at it. You can see videos of Ady. You're welcome to donate if you want, but even more so, volunteer. Share with us. We're also adapting it to make it more accessible. We have been a very fast-moving organization, but that is something that we are moving on right now. And I will make sure that our email is included to be shared with everybody to please give us your stories. Let us film you, let us lift you up, and let us get HCBS passed so we can get home care passed. So that's how you could help us, is to share your stories. We'd love to work with you.
Great. Thank you, Liz. And make sure everybody that you do that. And Nicholas, how can people follow the trajectory of this film?
Sure.
You watch it at Real Abilities tonight while you still can.
Yeah, start with Real Abilities and then spread the word on all of our social channels, which I see Morgan posting. And we are, in the next 2 weeks, you guys are the first to know, going to announce our US distribution. The film is going to be in theaters nationwide in major cities on August 13th. And it's really important for us to get people out. So it would really be
So mark your calendars.
So mark your calendars. And beyond that, we are planning, Amanda and I are working very actively to not just show the film in theaters and on PBS where it will ultimately be, but also to work with community organizations, the partners that Be a Hero already works with, also colleges, universities, to show Ady stories to students, to young people. We're developing a curriculum around the film about how to engage elected officials, and also about issues around universal health care and disability rights activism. And so we would really just love to find more partners to show the film with. And so if you know organizations and universities that want to partner with us and share Ady's story with your constituents, we are all about it. This is really a film that's a love letter to the activist community and to folks fighting for disability rights, for universal health care, and a number of other issues that we're confronted with today.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Ady, and thank you everyone for joining us for the panel tonight. I know one of the things that I'm hopeful about and really grateful for is that we are getting to have conversations like these, and that those conversations can activate and engage people in advocacy and just in the richness of their lives. And I can think of few organizations that do that better than Real Abilities. And so thank you, Real Abilities, for all the work that you've been doing over the last 13 years. And keep up the great work. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be here with you. Yitzi, I turn the mic over to you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for moderating this conversation beautifully. We have a couple of questions from the audience. A lot of them are being answered, but let's start with Elaine. Elaine, you are on the air. Elaine, can you hear us? Can we hear you? Are you unmuting? All right, we're not hearing Elaine. Let's go to Miranda. Oh no, here we are. Elaine.
It's actually Bob.
Oh, sorry, Bob.
Elaine is Bob. No, we're together on one little screen. This is Bob Klein. Just the question I posed on the chat is basically the same concept that you were just discussing, but in particular for Liz or anyone else, we do have the 2022 midterms coming up. And my question would be, in the same spirit that you zeroed in on certain members of Congress and otherwise zeroed in in the right way, what in particular or in general can we be doing, and in particular with reference to candidates in connection with 2022?
It's such a great question. It's also such a scary question because you always think you're done and you're never done. You know, we just finished an election. Why is this happening again? 2022 is essential because the Democrats might lose the House. Lose the Senate. Obviously, apologies. I have a very large sheepdog who decided to bark at this moment. But something I think that everybody can do is, first of all, we need to win, which means we need to get out, we need to mobilize, we need to volunteer, we need to share our stories, and we need to hold these Republicans who are running. And I'm saying Republicans, I'm very partisan, you may be on the other side, talk to me, join us, we can maybe, adjust. But for us, we really want to hold the incumbents who are preventing home care, preventing expansion of healthcare, preventing global vaccines accountable, which means we are hoping to film more videos. We are hoping for Ady to interview these senators and ask them why they're not doing anything in a very nice way. And then we're hoping to air those and to say, you can do better, you can be a hero and you can be better, or you can be replaced. And so I think what's really important is for everybody to not get complacent just because we've had 4 really hard years. We still have to keep fighting. So people should take care of themselves and take care of their health and take a little bit of a breather because you can't just keep going. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And then we have to start investing with small dollar donations, start to sign up to volunteer, start to decide what candidates you like, and start to work with them, because we cannot leave any door unknocked. We cannot leave any phone call unturned, and we can't let up at all. So we're kind of reassembling and getting ready, but we are going to be fully fighting for 2022 to win the Senate And you can also volunteer, be a hero. We will start to activate, we will mobilize, we will get folks out in any way we can. And you can share your story, even if you can't knock on a door or make a phone call. There are so many ways you can do this. So thank you for that question. And if you can sign up, subscribe to us, and follow, we're gonna stay on top of this because we can't let go.
Anyone want to add? No pressure. We have another question from Preston. This one's for the filmmakers. Preston, you're on the air.
Hi, thank you both for joining us and for this really, really inspiring film. How much had you explored disability in your filmmaking prior to working with Ady? And how do you anticipate, after doing this film, it's going to influence your work moving forward?
Sure, I'll go first. I have a family background in the disability rights movement. I mentioned earlier, my grandfather started the Lighthouse for the Blind in India, and my aunt has cerebral palsy and was very active in the ADA movement in San Francisco. And she told me very vividly when she was young about being on telethons where she was trotted out as a little girl with her disability for fundraisers without her consent. And those kinds of stories really stayed with me about how not to tell stories of disability and the ways in which she was exploited, and the inspiration porn that somebody referenced in the chat. And I did direct a previous documentary that was about the intersection of immigration and disability issues called La Americana, about a woman who comes to the United States because her daughter is left paraplegic from a car accident. And of course, she can't go back to see her daughter because of her immigration status. And so my opinion, I have a lot to learn on this issue, and I'm very grateful to the Real Abilities Festival. And we got a lot of great feedback and consultation from people with disabilities as we made this film. But I think that the disability rights issue reveals in many ways a well-functioning society. And I hope to try to bring intersectionality that shows how across issues, whether it's immigration or healthcare, the way that society cares for and empowers people with disabilities is really at the core of every other issue. So still learning and still hoping to be informed further and tell more stories in this vein.
Yeah, and this is my first feature film, and I feel so grateful to have had the experience and to learn more about the struggles that people with disabilities face, and to really kind of adapt my filmmaking style to learn how to make things more accessible for other people, to learn how to be more inclusive. And most of all, I feel like I learned that, of course, people with disabilities are some of the best activists and advocates out there, especially when it comes to healthcare. They're facing these issues acutely and in ways are much more close and personal to the issues than a lot of other people. And so I think they are some of the best storytellers out there as well. So I think highlighting their stories is critically important and adds like a tremendous amount of value to any film, especially one that focuses on healthcare like this one.
Oh, the one thing I want to add is that at People's TV, we are looking to be more inclusive in our filmmaking process and are always looking for filmmakers with disabilities to work with, producers, videographers, editors. And so I would love to always be put in touch and very accessible on our website if there are folks in the disability filmmaking community that we can collaborate with on these types of projects, as well as videos for organizations and brands.
Amazing. That's amazing to hear, and we'll be happy to connect people. We're going to take one last question from Miranda. Miranda, you're on the line.
Hello. So something that I'd been thinking about and had briefly discussed with others is just, I guess, the title of the movie itself, Not Going Quietly, and at least thinking to me how that title has a lot of different interpretations and meaning. And I was wondering if the decision to title the movie Not Going Quietly, if that was intentional and like, what types of layers to that film title were you considering when you decided that, this is what we're going to call this?
While we discuss that, Ady, could you also share what you wanted to call the film with the audience here? No?
Oh, he will.
Because there was a lot of debate about the best title. There continues to be, so I want Ady to get the opportunity to share that with you. I was curious to ask how you interpreted the title, and rather than just kind of expound on that, hear what it meant to you and how it resonated with you or didn't, because it's always helpful to hear that feedback. Sorry to answer the question.
Oh no, that's okay. I just had to wait to be unmuted. For me, I mean, well, for one, the idea of, well, I think this was a discussion with others. It's like, first, it's the idea of not going down without a fight, but also, and you can tell me if this is going way too much into the symbolic territory than it needs to, but also, like Ady's transition from verbal speech to using assistive technology, and how there's that conversation I remember between Liz and Ady about Ady wanting to keep using his voice verbally while he still can. And I think Liz being the one to say, there's still a lot that you can say with this device, it's still going to be your voice. You can tell me if that's just completely placing something symbolic into something that's real, or if that was something that was taken into consideration when deciding upon that title. But that was something that I had been thinking about.
Sure. Yes, I would say that the kind of defining arc of the film was always going to be his voice. It was the thing that kind of created this urgency to the storytelling. And I think the ultimate message is about what Ady says in the film, how he loses his voice, but he becomes more powerful, and he becomes louder and stronger as his physical voice loses. And so that was what we wanted to convey with the title. But it was a close competition with Ady's choice of title.
Well, one other option would be to call the film Peace Out, Motherfuckers. I wonder what the audience prefers.
Great. Can we get like a hands up for, can we do like a raised hand for Peace Out, Motherfuckers? And versus Not Going Quietly?
Oh, we're gonna lose. It's too embarrassing. Too embarrassing for us.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for making it kid friendly. That's really also important.
We're getting a lot of emojis validating Ady's stance here, as expected.
Yeah, it's going to be a crowd pleaser.
Thank you for the question. And the slogan came from Ady's campaign messages, obviously inspired from the Dylan Thomas poem, but Ady's team had banners that said, I may be dying, but I'm not going quietly. And the title was taken from the Be a Hero slogan.
I want to thank the film team here so much. Liz, Nicholas, Amanda, and Ady for being with us tonight. Thank you so much. This is an amazing film, and this conversation has taken it even deeper, and I think has made it an unforgettable evening. I want to thank Temple Grandin, who's still with us here. Thank you, Temple, for being with us tonight. A huge shout out to our good friend Lawrence Carter-Long for being an excellent moderator and an inspiration. Sorry. Sorry, Lawrence. Folks, thank you so much for being a part of Real Abilities this year. You have till midnight to catch up on some of your films. And we look forward to seeing you throughout the year. Of course, we are showing films all the time at the JCC. We're starting to reopen too with rooftop screenings. So please stay in touch and join us. Help spread the word and continue to be a part of this movement. Thank you all so much. Support our partners, and we look forward to seeing you very soon. Also, our JCC benefit this year is highlighting Real Abilities. Please support this kind of work for inclusivity at the JCC. Thank you. Thank you, Sean Horn. Thank you so much. Thank you all, folks. Have a good night. See you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ady.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yara and Morgan and Miranda. Thank you, Lynn.